the entire hidden world is at risk.
All this will be lost.
They're gonna fucking die. They're gonna die.
Hell, Spirits, finales of shows are often a spectacular event to feel once in a lifetime. Sometimes shows can be robbed of this moment due to the incompetence of a couple people, Disney, Netflix. But imagine a show you've watched for years is ending, and all, if not most, plot points are all wrapped up. Characters have grown since their debut, etc. And the show will always remain as a gem to most as the years roll by. However, what if the case is with a show you hate? Well, that's the case for me, at least, with The Nine Realms. Because I have hate watched this show the moment I saw the trailer. It was my first ever review video where I said it was going to be a one-time thing. Clearly things changed. And as much as I hate the very existence of the Nine Realms, it did help me continue my career here on YouTube. It obviously wasn't enough to go full time, but I can at least take it slow and steadily as others begin to watch my videos and enjoy what I make. And to all of those who stuck by to watch my videos, thank you. You don't know how much it means to me to have people actually enjoy my content that I put effort into. And not just some still images of the Captain Underpants movie with the song over which got 1,000 views. Yeah, if you managed to find that video, that was most likely from me. And with all that, guess what? It's finally here. The final season of Dragons of the Nine Realms. And an end to the chapter of reviewing this shit show. Well, for now. Weird they ended at 8 seasons though and not 9, but I'm not complaining. Though surprisingly I wasn't far off from my initial video talking about it. However, the ending to this show was pretty bad. Like, for an ending to a show, this was a pretty bad way to do it. For a little taste of what's to come, they still have a legitimate filler episode in every way it is. You're gonna hear all my thoughts on that, but oh my god, is it bad? So without further ado, Dragons of the Nine Realms Season 8, an underwhelmed end. Welcome to another episode of introducing things never seen before. My name is Spirit, I'm the channel you're watching, and I'm here to show you the most dumbest, the most stupidest, the most mind-boggling things you've ever laid your eyes upon. Trust me when I say that this gives me brain damage. The main problem with this show is that not only did the creators of the show manage to make it so anything that Hiccup touches is destroyed, his helmet, peg leg, and the book that got fucking stolen, but they managed to also disrespect his mother, Valka, by destroying her staff. And here's the best part. The staff was used for only one episode before it was destroyed.
Man, this is priceless!
During episode 1, Jormungandr escapes and Tom has to figure out how to defeat him. And can I say I'm glad they didn't brush this thing off as a one episode dragon. And they actually fell along the way throughout the season. But that's for the end. Anyways, he begins to train using the staff, which, might I add, he trains without any information? And all of that just because Hiccup lured Jormungandr with it into the cage it was originally being held. I also should note that a commenter on my last video said this was a disrespectful thing to include, and this was also a point Razorblade had brought up. I wasn't going to include it since it's not my point to make, and the examples they used were unfamiliar to me. Until I remember one of my own. Since Hiccup would always let dragons free even if they were dangerous or untrainable, truthfully I can only remember a handful of episodes from the original and Dragon Edge series, but one I remember briefly enough was the Skaldrin episode, where the dragon riders have to heal his wing while Ruffnut bonds with what she calls its Scaldy. And keep in mind, this is a dragon that shoots boiling poisonous water, and by the end they free him and they've bonded. I don't know if they ever return, but that's something that's going to be a surprise for me later on. Future Spirit here. So I was originally just going to cut it there. I thought I'd just shove in a few of the clips from the episode, because, you know, it's actual comedy and not whatever the Nine Realms is.
Cauldron and boiling poisonous death that way. Change wings and acid spitting invisible death that way.
What is it about her hair that the dragon likes so much?
Maybe it's the color of its mother's hair. That doesn't make any sense, does it? Sorry, I'm still terrified from what just almost happened.
But this time, reach out your hand, like this. Ah!
Coming in hot!
Well, this can't be good news.
I don't understand women.
But remembering that now, yeah, they really did fuck up Hiccup's character more than they originally thought.
We have to help him.
But back on topic, he trains with it until he uses it to lead dragons out of the realm where Jormungandr is attacking, in which he uses it on him, only for it to be eaten after messing it up once he reaches the cage that Hiccup put him in. And like, why even bring Valka's staff into the mix if its sole purpose was going to provide only context to how he got stuffed into a cage by a character who wouldn't do that? They may as well have said that they knocked it out or did something that didn't include the useless fucking staff. And I haven't even started yet.
Ooh. Ah. Listen to the sounds of the staff. Mystical, magical, dragonful.
Because you know how through the show they set up June as this weirdo that likes astrology, the myths/fables and tarot cards. The same cards they only ever make an appearance was the first episode of the first season to provide a, wedging point last season. Well, they introduced another part of her they only introduced in the first episode. And only that episode for a reason I can't even comprehend. Which is a crystal that she gives Tom which calms his nerves down. Only she's never used a crystal like this prior. And the only purpose that it fulfills is to calm Tom down enough as he uses the staff. That's it really. However, there's also the issue of Leonard, in which he has a change of heart for some reason. And his entire arc is fixed in one episode. I feel like this is a similar issue like they did in Toy Story, in which they gave the villain next to nothing to build up to the fact that they should be redeemed. Now, through the show, I've shown my distaste for Leonard because he's a Dagger ripoff, and that's more apparent now. But he's been the villain with nothing prior that sets up his character that he shows a change of heart.
How do you expect me to build an empire of dragon goods, like boots and dragon tooth jewelry, if I rest on the laurels of enough?
Especially since the previous season hadn't released fucking Jormungandr! But let me put this into perspective. In episode 3, they begin preparing to attack Jormungandr by freezing him with Speed Stinger serum. Only this is interrupted as Leonard attacks Tom, and the last we see of him is being chased by the big snake. And then in episode 4, he goes to the writers for help since Jack is hurt by Jormungandr, which sets up his redemption because in episode 6, an entire episode after 4, he shows up. Oh yeah, not in 5. We don't need him in episode 5. It has to be a surprise that he helps the writers. Because he has exactly 14 seconds and 14 frames of screen time. It's also treated as a cinematic moment.
Bus time, Jack! Thought you middle schoolers could use some help. Go. I got this.
Before he disappears indefinitely. And he doesn't get an end credit card either. I don't know how the creators managed to make this worse than Gabby Gabby, but they did. And it's made worse that they only redeem his character because Jack was hurt. The same dragon he enslaved used noises to capture it and control him multiple times, even after he was freed originally, and proceeded to use him to hurt other dragons. That is quite literally an abusive relationship to have. Like Leonard abuses and manipulates him. Jack really should have been given a better chance, and overall Leonard should not have gotten any sort of redemption. Because the other villain at worst harmed a few dragons looking for dragon sites. And then finally we have the God's Realm, which is said to be the place where the oxygen for the 9 realms is the central point. Only they introduce us to this in season 8. The final season. They mentioned the God's Realm in the previous season, but it's just disappointing they didn't bother setting it up properly before. Because it's the setup for Ragnarok, the fucking 2-parter finale in the season. And it's, well, if the snake removes or destroys the gem, all of the realms lose oxygen, like it did in episode 4. And you'd think that the realms where Dragonsight is the most crucial part of the realms, the life force of it, you'd think they'd focus more on it. And I've only just noticed why is the blatantly obvious and original Norse-inspired dragons used in the last 2 seasons. But the rest from previous shows are still there. Why bother calling it the 9 realms at that point? Already have they included so many things that just came out of fucking nowhere. And it really seems like they just half-assed everything, especially in the final season. Or at the very least, doing it off the top of their heads. And with my next point, you'll know why this show is even worse than before. I wanted to include this segment because when I went through concept art for something I'll discuss in a few minutes, I also stumbled upon the promo material that they use for Instagram and it makes me cringe. But, oh my god, they did it. They added seasonal concept art back to the credits. Only it's season 7 art. Wow. That's just... wow.
Well, that's just lazy.
There's not even season 8 concept art, by the way. The last episode has a bunch of art showing the lives of the characters after the events of the 9 realms, but no season 8 art. It's stupid enough they didn't bother to add concept art for the previous season, but to add a previous season's art to the newest season without even including the newest season's art is so goddamn sad. But there was something I mentioned in a previous video that only pisses me off more. As I said, Leonard already, when he was first introduced, was the most blatantly obvious clone they added to the show. It was bad enough fans and antis guessed that Tom and Thunder were descendants from the trailer, only to later be confirmed by the end of season 1. But they added a character who used a sharp object as their name, which resembled what their career initially was. Dagger was a Viking, so he's going to use swords, daggers, and other weaponry. This is the only time I will mention this stupid name, but Buzzsaw had a lumberjack company, and I'm only now just realizing why they gave Buzzsaw the Timberjack Dragon. But he used tree cutting tools and such to cut down trees, only they made him weak and limp like Dagger. Then to have a change at some point where his design changes to make him look more buff and grown. But the original design for Buzzsaw, remember the buff dude? And get this, apparently that design was either a stylistic choice by whoever the artist was, or it was the initial design Buzzsaw would have had, which is a much better design than what we got. My review in season 5 basically explains it. Now from this drawing, I can tell how much of a better character he would have been. Currently, Leonard stands on the edge of being a dumb and yet also a smart character, who in season 5 looks like a short-haired moist critical.
He's pulling his cock out!
Hence the thumbnail. He can make a dragon controlling and luring flute or piccolo, ceramic tea sets, ice cages, and yet both parties get outsmarted by each other with how Jormungandr is attacking the realm in the previous episode. And this episode has only one element from the plot that affects the story later on. Only Mr. Rake, the founder of the Icarus Project, pays a visit, and everyone has to hide their dragons. That's the sum of it. Let's see, they don't have Rake discover the dragons, or in a way that lets him in on it. They just show him around with various dragons hiding around the place. It's actually the worst episode in the series by far, and that's including the episodes where Hiccup's shit is often destroyed. Because why even bother setting up Mr. Rake for one episode only in the final season? Why not before? Why ever? I don't even think fans of the show were wondering who the fuck Mr. Rake was, because I sure as hell didn't care who set up the project. And it seems the creators didn't either, because he had no impact towards literally anything. And it's so sad they did this whole thing, because I just know that they knew a fostering situation was boring, but did it anyway. Because all they had to do was bond dragons with original characters? Have you seen the series? They clearly can't do it. And they shouldn't have done it since it was in the final season! If they wanted to do something like this, it should have been earlier on. Season 6 was literally there, where the dragons were escaping and causing issues in Rake Town. There was an entire episode dedicated to it. The first episode of Season 6 as well. And yet, no one in the show thought that at least even one of those dragons could have been tamed? But do you want to know what this episode was actually being used for? It was used to set up Sledkin for wanting to find the Dragon Sight gem that she's obsessed with just so she can be a big name in the scientist community, where it's only in the opening and ending of the episode. No, nothing in the middle or even a brief moment where she is on screen of her struggling to find it or anything. That was the entire purpose of the episode. Kind of reminds me when they tried pulling this shit with May and June, trying to mend their relationship at the start and end. And the only other thing that there was one of the side characters bonds with a speed stinger, which is later used for the stinger serum.
Oh, I like that one. Sleek, aerodynamic. Oh, that one is a little fast. Love his spirit. Look at him go!
And to add insult to injury, this is how I knew this was filler, because in the previous episode, Tom and June had broken up since Tom does what he wants, which apparently he still does after an entire show later. Buddy, it's been 8 seasons. You've got to have learned something by now. But here's the kicker. They don't mention their relationship. They don't have awkward moments. They're talking like normal human beings. Friends. Oh, come on, Spirit. You're just exaggerating. They're teenagers who had a small fling. You're right. I'm sorry. Only in the next episode, they're acting anxious, embarrassed, and unsure what to do because they broke up.
I want no part of this post-relationship awkward sandwich.
It's not an awkward sandwich. It's a regular sandwich. It's only awkward if there are just 2 ingredients, because one sandwich just has 2 ingredients.
There was none of that in the episode before. If Jormungandr wasn't mentioned in episode 2, I would have actually thought the episode had been forgotten to be put into a different season, because the episode is there just to do nothing.
Oh no!
Cullerson, you killed Ray!
When you do filler, it should be early on, or in an anime where filler is an endless show is kind of inevitable. Not when you're doing it during a final season where it's become a more story-centered show, and the final boss is here. That's not how you do things, because in the end, it just makes it look worse than it already was. Now, with around 8 seasons under its belt, a story planned as far back as possibly 2020 or earlier, but the show seems to have a big problem with payoffs. Payoffs are when something is first introduced that has some importance later on, such as when Marvel uses throwaway lines from a previous film.
Don't say it. Don't you say it. Left. Come on! On your left.
But with that, then you have the Dragon Alpha stuff, which returns, and the design for it is so shit, it's incredible. Now, it's clear they tried to be more original with this aspect, because the Dragon Alpha power was never introduced as something that was just given away like an heirloom. In the original films, they had to challenge an alpha for that power, for that control. But then you have its design, and I'm gonna tell you now, the reason the blue works with Toothless despite his green eyes, because he didn't look like he was a goddamn blacklight. The black and blue contrasted along his spine and made it look badass. However, unlike how the previous season, which didn't touch upon the Dragon Alpha stuff, I don't know how they managed to fuck it up this badly. But in season 2, we were introduced to fund this family, right? Actually, Spirit, we were introduced to the idea of the family in season 2. They made an appearance in season 4. Well, there's a problem with that links back to first introducing things, which is that the grandfather, the leader that protects the family, but more importantly, the Alpha, is only in one other season that isn't season 8, season fucking 4. His debut! They show this power in a dragon that only showed up one other time, only for him to die the very same episode he uses the power! It just... Chaos don't work like this. They should have given the Alpha more appearances, more screen time. Slowly introduce the power to, or watch how he defends his home. Not introduce a power in the same episode he dies, and proceeds to transfer it to Thunder. And to the people who defend this show, this is the show you're defending? This is what you're sticking with? If they wanted to do a payoff, they could have looked at the Owl House. Spoilers ahead. During the show, we're shown subtle hints that Hunter isn't like the other witches, such as having to rely on artificial magic because he's a powerless witch, or that he can talk to Flapjack while other witches can't understand their talisman. And in the episode Hollow Mind, it becomes clear on what Hunter is. A Grimwalker. Only just like us, the audience, we were in the dark to what it truly means. He inevitably runs away from the Emperor because he finds out he's the one who's killed the other guards throughout history, or from his perspective, his family. And from what I remember, there was also other clues and theories before Hollow Mind, but it was over a year old, so... And eventually all of that pays off with Flapjack sacrificing himself when Hunter is badly hurt. We know that Palismen and Grimwalkers have a sort of different connection than witches do, so seeing as Flapjack's life force is transferred to him feels natural. And the times where it's alluded such foreshadow that Bellis would kill Flapjack, they had things set up during season 2 for when the time came for Flapjack's death in season 3. That's payoff. They didn't just introduce the Golden Guard, play Hollow Mind the very next episode and say he's a Grimwalker. They built up to it, and didn't show that the characters had a full grasp on what a Grimwalker meant. Oh, but the issue doesn't stop there, because why is it not just surprising they decided to add drama between Tom and June's relationship the season after they get together? As I mentioned before, their relationship ended, but they could have done literally anything in the relationship to mend it. dragon-eating snake. He apparently was said to be alive 26 seconds into the episode. With a scarred eye, and then the second last episode with the Elder and Sky Torture having puncture wounds. They don't know what dragons to kill, but are fine with killing dragons that only made one other appearance. The main overall reason they kill the tension is that the deaths they end up doing don't stick in the show. Now I'd be fine with the fact if they didn't, because the original properties never killed off dragons. Only, if you imply that the fact that the dragons die not once, but 2 times, both are villainous dragons and both don't die, only to end up hurt? Then again, how am I supposed to know if something is actually dead? Because when I watched the Elder die, I simply didn't believe that happened because no other dragon in the show has ended up at the very least hurt. And when Sletkin dies earlier on, yes, actually dies, I don't believe it because the Sky Torture got hit and the Fault River hit the bottom of the fissure. They never showed anything like it before, and even with the threats that sometimes characters would say, like everyone will die if they use the elevator, considering what little they do, only to use a different way. And it doesn't even end there, as we're unsure of what actually happened with Jormungandr. Did he die? Nah. Was he put back in jail? Maybe. Actually, they have killed off dragons before. In the past 2 seasons, I'd hoped that they would reveal those big dragons since they had nothing to offer. But apparently in that episode, 2 Death Grippers flew into the air and were eaten by them. And for some reason, I just completely missed this part of the episode. I think I may need to rewatch everything if that's the case. But it only further insinuates that the writers are willing to kill dragons even if it's off screen with crunch noises, but only the dragons they need for that badass ending. But in a case like the Nightlight Elder surviving the first time around, it was clever because it contributed to Jormungandr tricking them, while the Sky Torture was nabbed and it just felt like utter bullshit. But the show doesn't know what it wants the tone to be. It wants to be a kid show that has death, but executes it poorly. Films and shows that have death in it, most of the time will mean something or have an outcome for it. They have that, they just only introduce it in the same episode. And then there's the tone set for Tom. Through the past couple seasons, they set Tom as a flawed character. Despite his experiences, he apparently doesn't change not once through the show, and that was only further heightened with the Hiccup legend he was living up to. As I have said countless times, the mystery between Tom and Hiccup was really obvious, and not something that needed to be done, because the character and learning about their ancestor to grow from them could be well done. But it's Hiccup. His story has already been told in multiple films, TV shows, and specials. It was enough time we've had for Hiccup, and need to focus on a new generation while not holding too close to them. But this season, each of the times that isn't filler, Tom loses each and every time. Tom did what he wanted and got his relationship broken. Missed the arrow to sting Jormungandr, watched an adult die to greed and gets outsmarted by Jormungandr. And honestly, I'm going to commend the writers, creator, someone, because seeing each loss dish out did something interesting to the character to make him grow differently than Hiccup did. There's actual stakes involved in the show that isn't death or wounds. Tom will lose the dragons and the dragons will lose their home, and he won't have anything else. Only! They kind of ruined this by saying that Tom is more like Astrid, and just... No, he should be himself. He tried to be Hiccup and failed, but when he was himself, he won. He wasn't Astrid because they never mentioned Astrid until that moment.
Maybe you were never meant to be Hiccup because you're Astrid.
This whole time, I've been trying to be something I'm not.
And now it's time to embrace what you are.
But then again, I do have an entire segment dedicated to just that. It's funny really, because in the opening to the first episode of first season, you know what, I'll just play it.
But I've got a dragon story you haven't heard. A story that really happened. And this story, this one is my absolute favorite. Because this story is mine.
Maybe you were never meant to be Hiccup because you're Astrid.
Boo! You suck! Funny how they say it's a new story, and yet they treat a lot of the same characters, elements, and such to make it a joke. Tom should have tried to learn what the others did, but do it differently. Do new things. Not repeating the same things that molded these characters into who they are to us. I honestly thought the writers had learned to make Tom a character of his own, but instead they circle back from the husband to the wife. Do I need to bring out Spider-Verse and Miles again? I will. I swear to God, I will bring it up. I will repeat it again and again if I have to. It just disappoints me so much that they did this, because the writers are just saying that Tom isn't any different to his ancestors. He has nothing original to him, and for some reason, that still motivates him because he's more like Astrid when he should be his own person. However, there's finally the end. Woo! We're finally here! And the ending sucked absolute dick. After Jormungandr dies, sent to jail, whatever, the show basically ends the same way the films did, which was the dragons and humans can't live amongst each other, because others will always try to do what the villains in the series did, and it's the same message in the film. It was just a retelling with different events. The dragons showed that they want the humans to live apart because of the actions of others, which is what had happened with Toothless showing Hiccup and him understanding immediately. While the ending to that film isn't perfect, it's flawed, granted, the ending is still an emotional piece with how much has happened after all those years. Dragons: The Nine Realms doesn't have that, because we're not even sure what the timeline of this show is. It lasted 8 seasons, sure, but none of the characters aged, and so this must have been within a year, while we grew up with Hiccup and all the other dragons for years and years. And by the end of the film's ending, what happens is that Hiccup says,
"Our world doesn't deserve you. Yet."
So in a show set in the future, 1,300 years in the future, I'm guessing people still don't deserve to have dragons still?
Because dragons figured out what we've known from the start. The world can't be trusted to know about them.
Just look at how close we came to Ragnarok because of one man's obsession with the world serpent.
And even though Buzzsaw came around, there are far too many Sledkins out there.
But what's the point of this show if dragons don't deserve to be with humans? This could have been an amazing show if DreamWorks would just put effort into it. And while that would be the end, as I said with the concept art, the credits showed that the current status of each of the characters. Tom and June are on dates, D'Angelo is a vet helping animals, Eugene had to go with Tom and June since their mothers are working together, is friends with Alex, the characters talk over on call what Alex called the 10th realm, and then the dragons are hanging out still, only most of them have baby dragons and I don't want to say it. But the ending really was underwhelming because the conflict ended halfway through the episode. Tom and June get back together, they repeat the film's ending and then they say their goodbyes. An ending I'd much prefer that cuts the ties off the characters they grew up with was Amphibia, which had an ending that Anne had to say goodbye to the friends and family she made, especially Sasha and Marcy. They had characters who didn't deserve redemption but still got their goodbye. The ending wrapped up the story and what most characters are doing now, but the ending to the 9 realms? Some characters didn't even have screen time to show where they are. There's really nothing much to it. This season sucked, like it just sucked, there's no other word for it. Eventually I do want to make an entire review that just won't be a compilation or even a video about the fault of the show. Or even how I'd make the series instead of making it a modern DreamWorks cash grab. And that's all I can really say. The show overall wasn't anything remarkable, it was horrible actually. It destroyed the characters of the previous property, cloned most of the cast, told the same fucking stories, couldn't do the simplest of themes, introduced new significant things in the same season, and if you want to watch the show, I can't stop you, but keep in mind that it's 19 hours of your life to watch, while you could watch how the original tale was better. Anyways, with that all done, Spirit out.